One day to New Finland, and the last day to honor the dead. Svafa adjusted the collar of their coveralls, hardly ceremonial, but out on the hunt, you had to pick carefully what you stuffed your hold with. If you did your job right, you didn't need to break out the funeral garb anyway, and though all the skill in the universe won't help you if your captain... They exhaled, counting to 5. The last one through the doors and out onto the deck. Svafa marched their way towards the milling crowd. Iridescent purples and reds and blues glittered overhead in vast nebula clouds. Endless black aether, a fingertip away. Separated by the faint shimmer of an oxygen shield that let them walk the deck as if it were an ancient longship. Each step grew harder, a lump rising in Svafa's throat. The crew parted, and Svafa's eyes fell on a trio of stretchers at the bow, swaddled in fuel-soaked cloth, only their faces left bare. Love made you better. But death brought hollow cheeks and graying skin, an eclectic collection of personal effects and handcrafted mementos nestled amongst folds or beside each body. Not much, but all that could be spared. Enough for whatever lay in their future. Halvar straightened as Svafa arrived. Without the bounciness, he became a terrifying statue. One by one, the rest of the crew stood to attention, forming a neat semicircle around the bodies. Svafa took their place between Halvar and Soren, hands clasped behind their back, and let a respectful silence fall. Eric, Levin, Aurea. They called as if to the gods. You fought bravely for the crew you loved, for the captain you loved, and we, in turn, fought for you. Though you leave us now, may you always be strengthened by the bonds you've made here. Short and simple. Like every speech of theirs. Anything else wouldn't have rung true. A dozen weapons thudded against a dozen shields. Those without stomped their feet, holding a singular beat that shook the ship. Halvar's enormous hand pressed a hastily constructed torch into Svafa's. Soren lit the soaked rags at its tip with a plasma tool. Svafa stepped forward and set each body alight in turn. A rush of heat, a roar of flame, a pang of grief. They raised the torch above their head, and the pounding stopped. Nothing but the crackle of flames, as the crew of the Valor watched their friends' souls be freed. Bright and bold, orange flecked with hints of green and blue from chemical concoctions, like a personal aurora. Only a few minutes, but for Svafa, it might have been a lifetime. As the last embers faded, Ira took Svafa's place, chestnut hair tumbling freely down her back. With her hands clasped over her chest, she sang. Not a word spoken, but every note laden with a farewell that curled its elegant fingers around your heartstrings. Svafa let themselves smile. There were some things even they couldn't hate about her. Volunteers marched in solemn step past Ira, shouldering the charred stretchers and carrying them to the edge of the deck. Slowly, carefully, they pushed the ashes through the oxygen shield. Borne on ethereal winds, Eric, Levin, and Oira soared along the barrier, traveling over the heads of their crewmates and into the Valor's wake to join their ancestors in the vastness of space. In retrospect, drinking while recovering from a head wound might have been a bad idea. Svafa held a hand to a throbbing temple and muttered several curses using the Allfather's name. As she set herself up on her bunk, blurred flashes of the funeral's aftermath filtered through, though most of the night escaped her. Unsticking her sandpaper tongue from the roof of her mouth, she stumbled to her feet and lurched to the side as the deck tilted. It's going to be one of those days. She asked whichever god would listen. To make matters worse, everyone Svafa passed smiled and strutted around like they'd never touched a drop in their life. A few supported particularly healthy glows, which might have amused her if her head didn't feel like the amber-eyed kraken was erratically squeezing it. Every clunk and hiss and thudding boot hammered her skull. She gritted her teeth, hid her wincing, and walked with as much authority as she could command. The ship tilted. Svafa's legs decided to stop existing for a moment, and she smacked against a steel door. Making sure no one was around to see her, Svafa let herself slide to the floor. Just how much had she drunk, even without the love from her crew? She should have worked off the worst of it by now. Maybe guilt overtook grief. Or no one bothered to stop her because, hey, the captain needed to loosen up after everything they've been through. Svafa gently smacked the back of her head on the cold steel and sighed. Someone have a busy night? She groaned. Of course, it was Anya's cabin. It's none of your business. Well, sorry. I couldn't help but hear it all go on up there. The least you could have done was bring me a drink. How do you take your arsenic? On the rocks, with a tiny umbrella. Anya's footsteps stopped just past the door. Have you thought about my offer, little Svafa? Svafa pursed her lips and stared silently at the ceiling. Traveling with a deranged cultist to track down a sage squid had gotten lost amongst the other madness in her life. But the clear image of that amber eye bearing down on her flashed in Svafa's mind. A dream. The same as Anya's proclaimed vision of the two of them and that kraken together. It was too eerie to be a coincidence. Is that a no? Or a yes, but I'm too embarrassed to say it? It's a shut up, Svafa snapped. We'll be in New Finland by the afternoon. Maybe I can find someone to take you off my hands. Oh, you'd be making a mistake. Because I wouldn't be fulfilling your prophecy. Because you'd never know if I was right or wrong. The bed creaked, presumably because Anya leapt onto it. Some people can live with that curiosity. Can you? Svafa stood on shaky legs and marched off, shoving the taunt to the back of her mind. Curiosity or not, her crew came first. The great hunt came first. And right now, that meant making port, resupplying, and figuring out what in the void came next.